Okay, welcome everyone. Let's do a sound check and make sure I'm good. Okay, welcome everyone. Let's do a sound. It's not sounding too good, so just a minute, but I'll get started anyway, and I'll deal with it. Let's see. All right, now check, check, check. Let's see what we got. So I want to welcome everyone in. Welcome to the Monday night show, Delphi, the Westville Report. So I'm still figuring out how to get all my sound equipment going, and it's a little difficult. But I will say hello to everyone, and then we'll get started. And I'm so glad to see you all tonight. So let's see what we got going on here. Just a moment. Let's see. So we got Amy. Hey, Amy. Welcome on in. Welcome in, Amy. And also Lisa, Abby Sellers, Rhonda Holton, Mark Ellis, Birdie 81, Heavy Metal Rehab, Lowered Customs, Heather Brown, Sweet Dude Shibby, Moonbeam 70s Child, welcome in. Regina Grady Bolden, welcome in. Ricardo 2, Deb, Spicy Cappy, Jan Humphrey. All right. And welcome into J.R. Nana Boomer. Plain Iron. Okay, Bonnie. Also, the Court of Public Opinion reminds you all to please like and subscribe. Yes, please hit the like if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen. Marie Kelly, Mrs. P, Debbie Packer. All right, also Mino Dino, 4 pit bulls across America. Five Green Acres, also silenced. Miss K. All right, we got Laura Naran. Welcome back in. All right, who else am I missing? Dirty Diana, welcome. Geez, you guys were chatting it up. I'm trying to catch everybody, so just apologize for the slowness of this. I'm reading through a million texts or chats. All right, we got Icy Cat. Welcome in, Icy Cat. And all you other ladies, look, gonna give up on it soon. Welcome Stephanie and Debbie Packer, Don McKenzie, Miss Pie Crust, Kayla, Heather Swinson, Gretchen Allen. Right. I'm so glad to see you all here. Nancy Drew 101. There you go. Nancy Drew Mark Safe. All right, what's up, y'all? Kay is here. Fur Baby Daddy's here. Marcy McQuarrin. So glad to see you all. Okay, looks like we're getting through. KP, welcome. Just Me, welcome. Christina, welcome in. Goddess, welcome in. All right. Teresa, welcome in. Eliana Davidson. Okay, Jojo. Tiffany Renee Rocks. Asha Harry. Kelly Shaw. Getting through this. Okay. No, I will not. Heather Brown. I said hi, Heather. Okay, who else we got here? Debbie Mustard. Digital. Mary Martin. All right. Goose says Gammy. Are you only hearing in one side? I don't know what's wrong with that. I can't help you, sorry. All right, let's see what else we got going wrong here. Dennis McKean. Okay. Mimi K. Mary. All right. So welcome into everyone. And can everyone hear in both earbuds? Are we good with the sound? All right. So welcome into everyone. Hey, wow, what a week it has been, right? Tony R., welcome in. All right. So I think everything is going good enough. So here's the deal. There's a lot going on. I recommend that you all check out my community page. I've made some posts that I would like everyone to go in and hit the thumbs up on all our comments, okay, in there. But go check out those community posts. There's another one coming tomorrow. Trying to help everyone navigate the treacherous waters of the Delphi drama. Welcome into everyone. Welcome into Kaleida Hope and Scott Perkins. And all of you, okay? So listen, tonight we will be taking a close look at Westville, and trust me, after tonight you should have a lot of threads to go pull on and things to research and think about regarding Westville and the DOC in general, okay? So we'll be doing that tonight. That's what you're in for, okay? and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, welcome in Kate, you, Carmichael, and everyone else who's coming in. Okay. Now listen, regarding all of this drama that's circulating, everyone has to really keep in mind that in no way that anyone in their right mind would allow their husband to rot away in squalor on purpose. Okay, so anyone who's trying to confuse you, just forget about it, and have faith that your emotions are being played upon. And there's no way that Kathy Allen is going to do anything that's not in the best interest of Richard Allen, her husband. And so give the woman some respect, some privacy, and some credit. That she is very well aware of everything that's going on surrounding her husband, and she is taking the steps she feels necessary and most appropriate. And I guarantee you that, okay? And anyone who tries to tell you differently, well, they're just trying to prey on your emotions. And if they're genuinely coming from that perspective, then maybe they need to do a long, hard think in underestimating the mental fortitude and overall, I don't know, level of consciousness of Miss Kathy Allen, because it would be very disrespectful to not give her the credit that she is due as a functioning adult human being. Okay, so with that being said, I'll leave it at that, and we'll get to it at a later time. It's not the point of the show, but it is relevant because part of the contention is the clear abuses at Westville. Okay, and so don't get it twisted. There were absolutely clear abuses at Westville, and trust me, all parties involved were very well aware of it, I am sure. And so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight is some of the egregious conditions and past incidents involving Westville, okay? I'd like to also say hi to, who's that just came in? Santana, Treto, and whoever else is coming in. I implore you all to come in, okay? Everyone who'd like to come into the live chat. It's very nice people in there. And trust me, I'll be a little distracted tonight going through this volume of material. So while I'm doing that, you feel free to enjoy the chat. I think it's time to get started. Welcome, Dan Jones. And Rachie from England. Okay, so, oh, wow. So let's see where we'll start here. So basically, Westville Correctional Facility has been the subject of several complaints for misconduct and abuse over the years, as well as a couple deaths. And so tonight we will be going through some information, particularly about 5 or 6 specific lawsuits filed by inmates of Westville regarding these allegations. We'll be stepping through one by one, okay, and that's how we'll handle it. And then when we're done with that, we'll be going into some contextual material. And so, anyway, that's what we'll be talking about. And if you do have your notepads, there will be times where you'll probably get some names and some details that you can add to your notepads. That's worth being aware of because, trust me, the gravity of the situation with Westville, like many prison facilities across the U.S., is very much, it's just startling. So we'll be doing that tonight. Welcome in Zoe and whoever is coming in, who have I missed? I apologize for missing, but I'm going to get started now. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm going to get rid of some things on my screen so I can see a little better. All right. Whoops. Well, these things just happen that you don't want to happen with a screen. Okay. All right, so we're going to bring this back up. There you go. And we're going to start with this one. All right, because I think it's a good introduction for you all. And you'll understand as we get into it. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. Remind you to hit the thumbs up and enjoy yourself, okay? I'll do the reading for you. I just put things on the screen so people know I'm not lying, like I tend to do, okay? So this says, Indiana inmates appeal to People's World and its readers for help. And this is from December of 2022. And it's showing an April 28, 2020 photo, inmates at Westville who are watching protesters who are protesting about safety measures after an outbreak of COVID-19 at the prison. Now listen, we're not even going to get into that. All right. In October, People's World began receiving letters from our incarcerated readers at Westville Correctional Facility asking for help with dehumanizing conditions, which I can attest to. Denial of necessary health care, withholding of medicine, lack of heat, and undrinkable water were some issues that Jamark Jackson and Harry Harrison reported. Harrison is currently incarcerated and is bound to a wheelchair due to inaccessible surgery. I've been paralyzed from the waist down for 6 years due to a bullet that has been left in my back, he said. With surgery not an option, Harrison told People's World the horrors of being disabled at Westville Correctional Facility. The wheelchair I have currently is broken in 5 places. It puts my life at risk every day. He has broken teeth as a result of faulty equipment. Harrison insists that without access to proper health care, hygiene, and suitable living conditions, his sentence will not reach maturation. The judge sentenced me to do time, not to death. And I've often stated that time is the penalty for most people. Remember, time, not torture. Time. Jamark Jackson has a hernia that restricts his mobility and prohibits him from working. He is being denied access to health care. Jackson reached out to People's World, he said, because he fears losing his life. His hernia has continued to grow and has become more painful. And keep in mind, hernias are a horrible medical condition. My brother has suffered from one that he had eventually had fixed, but they can become debilitating. All right. Copies of requests for health care and grievance forms indicate the following. On 6/26, Jamark reported severe pains and trouble with mobility via a request for health care form. On 7/8, Westville confirmed his hernia and ordered him a hernia belt with no further action scheduled. According to the Mayo Clinic, an inguinal hernia isn't necessarily dangerous. It doesn't improve on its own. However, it can lead to life-threatening complications if not treated. On 9/13, I have a hernia, and this medical department is aware of it. Jamark requested both the bottom bunk privilege and to avoid the life-threatening risk of falling out of bed, and additional treatments to resolve the severe pain. I need medical to do their job and help me get this serious problem taken care of. Okay? On 9/16, wrong attitude when asking for something was written as the response from prison health care staff. Let's say it again. Wrong attitude. Is that the right way to handle a medical complaint? Wrong attitude when asking for something was written as the response from prison health care staff. Wow, wow. I wonder how many medical malpractice incidents have occurred at Westville just in the past 10 years. Jamark was granted bottom bunk privilege for the next 3 months, but no further evaluation, testing, or treating of his medical condition. All right? On 9/28, he wrote in an offender grievance, medical has continued to ignore what a ruptured hernia could do to me. I have to receive, in other words, I need to receive adequate medical treatment, which would be surgical, okay? On 11/12, he turned in another request for health care. Medical confirmed it's been 4 months. No testing, no x-rays, just a belt. I'm being deprived of basic medical treatment is the way I would say it. All right? Westville was officially opened in 1979. Now considered hell on earth in Indiana. The construction of education and industrial complexes along with a gymnasium, multi-purpose building, and a chapel came during the transition from a mental hospital into a prison. In 1991, an additional 220-bed complex was added. The facility now has the capacity to hold more than 3,400 individuals. According to the Indiana Department of Correction, it is state-operated and a prison for male adults. Nearly half of the prison's population are of people of color. That means black folks and Hispanics, slightly higher than the average of 40 for Indiana's jails and prisons as a whole. Well, you know what's interesting about that? I wonder what the racial makeup of Indiana is in general. Okay. In 2022, Indiana's General Assembly approved a $400 million contract to demolish and replace the aging facility. But for now, it still operates at full capacity. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? In 2022, a $400 million demolition and replacement was awarded. But for now, it's still trucking along at full capacity with dirty water and broken facilities and all kind of other things, and apparently negligent healthcare staff. And to hear the opinions of those who live there, the lack of properly maintained infrastructure is life-threatening. According to Harrison, the roof of the housing unit where he and Jackson live in the medical dormitory has fallen in twice and is going to collapse again, as it has not been repaired. In addition, Harrison reported that over 60 windows are broken, including in the showers. As of November 15th, more than 10 people inside the medical dorm have contacted People's World asking for help in getting the heat turned on, as they cannot thoroughly wash themselves in freezing conditions. According to weather data, the average November temperature at Westville was between 35 and 47 degrees. And you expecting people to take a shower in that? Now deep into December, it's even colder, says People's World. Racial tensions inside Westville have also been reported, well, naturally. Individuals of color, which is half the population, face racist repression from the staff, okay, I guarantee you. Remember the Odinist guards? Are you going to say they're not racist? But individuals of color claim repression from the staff via medical neglect while simultaneously dealing with the threat of harm from guards. Remember, Odinist, racist, white supremacist guards, and other Aryan Nation incarcerated persons. As we have been investigating this situation, claims People's World, one of our unnamed contacts was attacked by a member of the racist Aryan Brotherhood group, but was punished for defending himself. On December 2nd, another inmate, 53-year-old Matthew Chester, died at Westville. People's World's anonymous source alleges that Matthew's life was ended by the correctional officers that beat him to death. This witness is being kept in the hole, which is administrative segregation, throughout the ongoing investigation. Okay? Remember that name. We'll come back to it. Matthew Chester. In December, People's World was told of minor repairs taking place and that the heat of the dorm was finally turned on. Warden Kenneth Gann, who was warden at the time of this article, did not respond to multiple requests from People's World's team to investigate the dorm or to comment. When asked how People's World readers could help, Harrison responded, "We need people to lift our voices and help those of us in serious need." Remember, he's one of the inmates. Readers are encouraged to contact the Indiana political leaders, representatives, and demand immediate medical care and proper repairs to the medical dorm and the facility as a whole. Denial of medical care is defined as cruel and unusual punishment, which is prohibited under the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution. Jason Jones, a licensed clinical social worker who works with the formerly incarcerated in Indianapolis, told People's World, "Human rights should not be blocked by prison walls." Let's say it again for the people in the back. Human rights should not be blocked by prison walls, especially for pretrial detainees, brother. Many of those suffering inside of Indiana's jails and prisons are there as a result of addiction, mental health problems, okay, or indigence. Okay, so that was by Jake Watkins, a representative of the BCTGM Local 372A in Indiana. Okay, Jake Watkins. All right. Now, let's remove this for a minute. I'm going to read for you a few things because Matthew Allen Chester was serving time for resisting law enforcement and assault of a police dog. Chester was beaten by Westville guards and died on December 1st, 2022. Indiana State Police and LaPorte County, Indiana Coroner's Office were put in charge of the investigation. Okay? There's been zero follow-up from these people regarding these claims and this investigation. Now let's read from, this is from WTHR, who says on December 4th, 2022, detectives are investigating an inmate's death at a Northwest Indiana state prison. The Westville Correctional Facility requested Friday that the Indiana State Police investigate the death of an inmate at the facility. The inmate was identified as 53-year-old Matthew Chester. The Indiana State Police said detectives with its Criminal Investigations Division are handling the case. The LaPorte County Coroner's Office will help the detectives investigate. State police haven't given any indication to WTHR on how Chester died. However, investigators did say that an autopsy has been conducted, and those results, as well as a toxicology report, are pending. State police claims it's an active investigation and no more information will be released at this point. And again, this was WTHR December 4th, 2022, only 3 days after the alleged murder of Matthew Chester. And there's another one, this one being from Lakeshore Public Media, which was published December 2nd, 2022 by Michael Gallenberger. And it just reported basically the same, okay? Michael Gallenberger is a news reporter at All Things Considered on 89.1 Lakeshore Public Media. Anyway, you can also find that because he basically reports identically pretty much the same thing. Now, sorry. Let's see what's next here. We got, next up, we're going to bring up trying to get for you. Right one here. We're going to discuss another murder or suspicious death. Let's talk about this one. Richard Bucky Canada. Okay. This can be found if you search the courts, okay? Now, Richard Canada was in recovery from drug issues when he was transferred into a unit known to be the most lawless and rampant with spice or synthetic marijuana at Westville, okay? After some time in this particular unit, which, as I've said, what is known to have been rampant with spice or synthetic marijuana, Mr. Canada relapsed, okay? Now, an officer noticed at some point that he's sitting in his bunk lethargic. Well, the officer reported to his supervisor, who stated that they would bring in their drug task force to respond to Mr. Canada. These squads who responded to these drug incidents were known to be heavy-handed correctional officers using physical force to gain control of inmates who they believed to be under the influence of spice, instead of utilizing more rehabilitative and medical techniques as outlined in Indiana Code 11.8.2.11. Now, several of these officers had prior disciplinary actions for excessive use of force. And this squad went in heavy-handed, handcuffing Mr. Canada, dragging him from his cell to the stairs, throwing him down the flight of stairs. The inmates who became witness to the incident tried contacting Mr. Canada's family via their tablets, and so Westville cut the Wi-Fi off to the unit so that the inmates could not communicate to anyone outside as to Mr. Canada's condition or the physical assault by the guards. Mr. Canada's head struck a brick that was sticking out from the wall, which caused a major head injury. Mr. Canada was medevaced out and pronounced dead on arrival. Upon this death, Mr. Canada's estate filed an excessive force suit against Westville on January 2nd, 2023. Now, it was very strange how that case was handled, because part of the claim was dismissed without prejudice, and however, the judge did allow excessive use of force claims against 3 of the officers to proceed. Now, that information is publicly available. I intended to have it to read to you today, but I had problems accessing the PACER website to pull that one for you. But that is Mr. Richard Canada versus Westville Correctional Center. Okay, Estate of Canada v. Indiana is the case. Estate of Canada v. Indiana. Now, let me see. We got another one. I don't know if I'm getting out of order here. What is this? Okay. Now, next up, Mora versus Westville Correctional Facility. Okay. Mora had broken his leg playing outside on the recreational time with other inmates in May of 2005. He had surgery to repair the broken leg, but was denied post-surgery treatment, which left him permanently physically handicapped. Now, it's interesting because the case was dismissed by the Supreme Court, but it was only because Mora, in filing pro se, sued the wrong party, and Westville did not, or he did not name specific defendants, but Westville as a whole, and he also missed an appeal deadline. So right here, though, you'll have some, all of this can be found as well on the internet. All of this information you'll see tonight and here is publicly available on the public internet for your perusal with a simple Google search. Okay? And you'll see here, this is the name, Mr. Marte Mora. Okay? You'll see the dates. And I'm not going to go through it all, because most honestly, I have to say to you that that this handwriting is absolutely pretty much indecipherable. Okay, it's very difficult. Okay, but we can go through some of that. Actually, this is not the one I'm thinking of, but let's whoops, keep doing it. Let's go through some of this. Okay. Let's see. The following statements are verifiable, made in good faith. Okay. Mora is an ordinary prudence pro se litigant, okay, in need of legal assistance. He's suing Westville because the Westville Recreation Department and this is kind of indecipherable here, but allowing him to be recreating in a dangerous environment without proper gear, to make it most simple. The factual background is as follows. Mora, while an inmate, suffered an accident in which his right leg was broken. Mora participated in a soccer game on May 18th of 2005. A member of the opposite team kicked Mora, fracturing his leg. Oh, Lord. The soccer game was authorized by the Recreation Department and played under constant surveillance of the guards. Mora's accident could have been prevented, but Westville's Recreation Department failed to possess and issue proper protection equipment like shin guards, tackles, and cleats for soccer ball players. It's a fact that Westville's Recreation Department possesses and issues protective equipment for basketball players, but ignores the protective equipment needs of soccer players. Mora is suing the St. Anthony Health Center and his physician, John Doe, for failing to order, request, or recommend physical therapy for his fractured leg, which is standard treatment for fractures. Mora is suing Correctional Medical Services and Prison Health Services because Westville's medical staff didn't take care of Mora's medical needs after his accident. After Mora's accident, a Westville doctor, John Doe, didn't know what to do about Mora's leg, so after 45 minutes, Mora was transported to St. Anthony Health Center's emergency room, where they affirmed that Mora's right legs, tibia and fibula, were broken. 2 days after Mora had been operated on, and while under the care of St. Anthony Health Center, 2 nurses and 2 guards ordered Mora to get up and walk in shackles. What? You hearing that? Without any assistance. It was extremely difficult to walk. It caused unnecessary and wanton infliction of pain. It's called torture. The nurses and correctional officers were deliberately indifferent to Mora's serious medical needs. Note, a St. Anthony Health Center's doctor recommended that Mora have at least one person assist him. Okay, see Exhibits C and D. Now that's important. Remember, we're only talking about 2 days after the operation of the broken tibia and fibula were broken. Okay, 2 days after, the nurses and the correctional officers say, "Get up and walk in the shackles." Okay, now he had been recommended having an assist to walk. But the recommendation was ignored by St. Anthony Health Center staff and Westville staff. At the Westville Infirmary, Dr. John Doe, knowing and seeing that Mora's fractured and recently operated leg didn't have a cast and had not yet mended, constantly ordered Mora to get up and walk. It's called torture. The doctor was not allowing Mora's fractured and recently operated on leg to heal properly. Westville staff was so insensitive to the St. Anthony Health Center's doctor's orders that the doctor needed to see Mora to monitor his fractured leg and follow up on his medical treatment, condition, and attention. Westville staff simply told Mora that there was no time to do such things. Whoop. Okay. One of Westville's doctors told Mora that Westville had no medical equipment or staff to give Mora the necessary physical therapy. Mora filed grievances presenting the notorious facts of his complaint, but to no avail. Mora requested legal help to the ICLU, but they were not available to help. See Exhibit E. Westville staff denied Mora several follow-up doctor's appointments. Mora was denied fundamental basic medical needs, medicine, treatment, and therapy. Westville released Mora, but Westville staff didn't make a full evaluation of Mora's impairment. Westville staff kept a general platter of continuous gross misconduct. the results of Mora's accident, a broken tibia and fibula, and a steel rod placed inside his leg, but no cast, and forced to walk in shackles without assistance. And the filing claims that this case is before the court because all of Mora's efforts to communicate with the defendants to resolve the matter were to no avail. It's also a fact that the Indiana State Attorney General contacted the defendants, that means Westville, and sent them a copy of Mora's tort claim, but to no avail. At this time, Mora has a noticeable limp and constant severe pain in his operated steel rod implanted leg that won't allow him to work. Mora has no doctor, no medicine, and no physical therapy. Mora is in need of a doctor, of medicine, and of physical therapy. Okay? And you see that that is that. Now, it's not even close to the end, okay? This is just so rich. Oh, here's one for you. The case of Mr. J. Vermillion versus Westville Correctional Center. Now, you're going to love this one. Due to accusations of violating Westville's disciplinary code, Mr. Vermillion was ordered into segregation for 1 year. Sound familiar? Does this sound familiar? Vermillion, well, let me say this. He was an inmate at least. He was not a pretrial detainee, but still, Vermillion, ordered into segregation for 1 year. He was suspected of being involved in a prison break. 3 other inmates had successfully escaped. Vermillion, however, did not, but he was transferred to Westville, placed into this segregation. Okay? Now, everyone knows that segregation is supposed to have a maximum of 30 days, possibly even 15, depending on who you listen to. Indiana claims they do not provide solitary confinement, but use restricting housing assignment classifications. Now, let's read this here. You guys are going to be astonished by this. He spent more than 4 years in solitary confinement. Now Indiana will pay him $425,000. For more than 4 years, J. Vermillion said the unit where he was held in an Indiana state prison was essentially cold storage. In a federal complaint, Vermillion said that starting in 2009, he was housed in isolation for 23 to 24 hours a day at Westville Correctional Facility. There, Vermillion said, he was subject to extreme cold. That sound familiar? Is he the only one saying that it's extremely cold in the winter? Constant strobe lighting. Does that sound familiar? Sounds like something I've heard Richard Allen discuss. And mace fumes. Oh, sounds like something I've heard Richard Allen go through. Among other conditions. Yeah, which is also something I heard Richard Allen go through. But we'll get to Richard Allen. Vermillion said the correctional officers found him guilty of trafficking and placed him in punitive segregation while he was serving a sentence at the Indiana State Prison, which is a supermax. Soon after, he was moved to solitary confinement at Westville without notice, an explanation, or a chance to make his case against it. All right? Under Indiana law, a person can spend a maximum of 30 days in restrictive housing also known as solitary or segregation, after which authorities must review whether the prisoner should remain there. Vermillion alleged in the complaint that an official at the Indiana State Prison sentenced him to a year of disciplinary segregation at Westville despite the law. Oh yeah, it's true. The Indiana Department of Correction did not specifically acknowledge any of the claims outlined in Vermillion's complaint. The state will now pay him $425,000. Now, the Indiana Department of Correction will pay Vermillion $425,000 as part of a settlement signed by both parties October 11th. Listen to this, y'all. No human being should be forced to endure the conditions that Mr. Vermillion lived through for any amount of time, much less 4 years. Maggie Filler, who is representing Vermillion on behalf of the MacArthur Justice Center, said in a statement to CNN, "Enter your email to subscribe to CNN 5 Things newsletter." Sorry, this is a printout from, I should have deleted that, okay? This settlement, one of the largest of its kind, is a wake-up call for the Indiana Department of Correction. Well, that's what they thought. And every other prison system still using this outmoded and dangerous form of punishment, the statement continued. Vermillion, 59 years old, is currently serving an almost 40-year sentence for murder, burglary, and other crimes at the Pendleton Correctional Facility and is not scheduled to be released until at least 2036. State says it's not admitting fault. In the complaint, Vermillion alleged that in 2009, corrections officials told him that they were filing criminal charges against him because they believe he had helped a group of other men escape from the Indiana State Prison, where he was being held at the time. Vermillion said he stopped answering questions for their investigation, invoking his constitutionally protected right against self-incrimination. Indeed. But doing so, Vermillion alleged, resulted in retaliation that ultimately led to his transfer to the Westville Correctional Facility, where he spent years in what he referred to as disciplinary segregation. The Indiana Department of Correction said it did not admit any fault, wrongdoing, or liability in Vermillion's case, but it reached a settlement in order to avoid the uncertainties that would come with taking the case to trial. Yes, let me remove this for a moment and talk smack, because you would have paid millions of dollars. So I hope everyone understands that. The reason they settled for $500,000 is because they would have had to pay millions of dollars. Do you understand? We agreed to a financial resolution of the case solely to avoid the uncertainties of litigation and the expenses that would be incurred in the prosecution of the case. Dave Burston. Sounds familiar? A spokesman for the Indiana Department of Correction said in a statement to CNN. I hope everyone is listening. However, we continue to deny any fault, wrongdoing, or liability with respect to this litigation, says Burston. Though Burston did not acknowledge Vermillion's specific claim of being held in solitary confinement, he added the department does not house prisoners in solitary confinement, but rather in restrictive housing. You see the semantic games? The semantics games here? Prison justice advocates, however, consider the terms to mean the same thing because they do. Any offender placed into restrictive housing is provided a review each 30 days to determine if such housing classification remains appropriate. His bootlicking statement says, yes, no. Trust me, just like with Richard Allen, I guarantee you, there were no 30-day reviews, and if they ever occurred at all, they were merely procedural, which means just checking a box on a form. There was no serious consideration of reclassification or moving the individual to a more healthy environment. Additionally, each offender receives an annual classification review, which is another ticking of a box, to determine appropriate housing assignment, said bootlicker Dave Burston. Okay? So, sorry. Gonna call it as I see it. I'm not going to listen to any spokesperson for the popos. Okay, just a moment, please. Hey, how's the audio? Is it in both? Is your audio in both now? See, finally, I got someone to answer that. I got someone to answer my audio question. Is the audio in both channels now? I tried to fix it. It's just a button I have to click. Right? Let's continue. Whoa. That's not what I was looking for. Just a moment. Well, we'll go with it. We'll go with it. I need some water, though. All right. We'll go with it. All right. Thank you. I wish I would have known that before. Y'all let me know next time. It's just a goofy, it's a goofy setting. It's a goofy setting on StreamYard that I had the wrong button clicked. Okay. Now, now we're going to talk about Daniel Johnson. In 2019 and 2020, Mr. Johnson was assaulted on 2 occasions by the gangster disciples. These assaults resulted in a broken facial bone, and multiple lacerations. Johnson was given medical attention, but was taunted by inmates, and he continuously begged, all right, to not be returned to that unit because of his fear of being assaulted further. But upon return, and while handcuffed, he alleges that Officer Brown reportedly pushed him into a concrete pillar, breaking 2 teeth, throwing him onto a bunk, twisting his wrist, threatening him, and after that beatdown, he ended up being transferred to a new dorm facility. But the inmate who had initially assaulted him was transferred into that same new dorm only a month after the assault. Okay. Now, let's read from Mr. Johnson's complaint here. It says, Daniel Johnson was imprisoned at Westville and has since been released from IDOC. While incarcerated, Mr. Johnson was attacked by 2 inmates at Westville, denied protection, and beaten by the guards at Westville, then raped and beaten by an inmate in the shower. Daniel Johnson is a citizen of the U.S., a resident of Allen County, and here are the facts of the case. The commencement of this action is based on injuries suffered by Mr. Johnson in 2019-2020. These injuries resulted from the actions and inactions of the defendants. These injuries resulted, from the actions and inactions of the defendants. Who are the defendants? Westville Correctional Facility, John Doe Guards 1 to 10. While incarcerated at Westville, on October 27, 2019, Mr. Johnson was attacked by two inmates. This attack left Mr. Johnson unconscious and with a broken facial bone. He also sustained multiple lacerations. The inmates who beat Mr. Johnson are believed to be members of the Gangster Disciples, or the Folks Gang. One of the inmates involved in the beating was taken into segregation, which angered the other members of the Gangster Disciples. When Mr. Johnson returned to his dorm after the beating, he was harassed and threatened by inmates supportive of the Gangster Disciples. This caused Mr. Johnson to fear for his safety. Mr. Johnson informed the guards of the threats he was receiving from the Gangster Disciple Folks Gang. He reasonably feared for his safety, and he pled with the guards to not be returned to his original dorm because of the fear of retaliation from the gangsters. The guards were deliberately indifferent to Mr. Johnson's safety concerns, placed him in handcuffs, beat Mr. Johnson, slammed his head into a concrete pillar, broke two of his molars. Then, after the beating, he was transferred to a new dorm. At the beginning of November 2019, one of the inmates who had originally attacked and beat down Mr. Johnson was transferred to his new dorm. As I mentioned, that's just a month. Mr. Johnson was then placed in protective custody, in other words, solitary, on November 4th, 2019. This did not stop the threats and harassment from other inmates. As we know, Richard Allen received threats and harassment his entire time at Westville while in seg. Then on March 19th, 2020, Mr. Johnson reported the threats and harassment to guards. He again feared for his safety and informed the guards of his fear. The guards were deliberately indifferent to the concerns for his safety. More specifically, they responded by laughing at Mr. Johnson and sent him back to his dorm. His property was then stolen while the guards watched. Mr. Johnson was then raped in the shower by another male inmate. Mr. Johnson sustained damage to his teeth as a result of the assaults, including broken teeth. He made several medical requests to have his teeth examined and fixed. It took Westville Correctional Facility 6 months or more to just examine his teeth. They pulled out one of the teeth, or tooths, they pulled out a tooth, and then left the other uncorrected. Now, we can skip through some of this, but it basically says Mr. Johnson suffered because of the violent, degrading, and inhumane treatment of the guards at Westville. Westville's deliberate indifference to his safety constitutes cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution. The cruel and unusual punishment he endured at Westville caused him serious pain, discomfort, humiliation, and anguish. Mr. Johnson also incorporates all of these actions into allegations as above into this, and cites Article 1, Section 16 of the Indiana Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Westville Correctional violated his rights under Article 1, Section 16 of the Indiana Constitution through its actions and inactions, and deliberate indifference and an obvious threat to Mr. Johnson's safety. Westville's treatment of Mr. Johnson and lack of medical treatment and proper treatment constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. Westville Correctional also breached its duty to Mr. Johnson by failing to protect him from known threats to his safety by gang members, the gangster disciples. Okay. This caused Mr. Johnson to suffer extreme pain and suffering. This breach of duty caused Mr. Johnson to suffer severe mental anguish and was willful, wanton, and reckless. Mr. Johnson was owed a duty of care and the ensuring of his safety while in custody, but Westville breached this duty by failing to protect him from known viable threats to his safety on a second occasion in March of 2020. Okay. Regarding the guards at Westville, guards 1 through 10, referenced throughout this complaint, were employees of Westville Correctional Facility. They engaged in torturous conduct while employed. Their conduct was committed within the scope of their employment. Their conduct was direct and approximate cause of injuries to Mr. Johnson. Their torturous conduct is imputed to Westville Correctional Facility by Respondent Superior, and the Westville Correctional is liable as a principal for all injuries and damages to Mr. Johnson resulting from torturous conduct of the guards. The guards did touch and beat Mr. Johnson in a rude, violent, insolent, and angry manner on October 27, 2019, causing harmful and offensive contact. That contact was without the consent of Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson claims that through the actions and inactions of the employees and agents of Westville, who were deliberately indifferent to his safety and well-being, he needlessly suffered because Westville ignored his repeated requests for medical treatment from the physical damage resulting from his assault. Okay, this is cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the rights guaranteed by the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Okay, Mr. Johnson endured cruel and unusual punishment at Westville due to their action and inaction, causing him serious pain, discomfort, humiliation, and anguish. Mr. Johnson begged the court to enter judgment in his favor. Okay, now I'm going to move on to someone named Larry McPherson Jr. I'm going to briefly relay to you the fact that Mr. McPherson Jr. filed a suit against Westville Warden John Gallipo. You know that name. That name should sound familiar to all of you. For allegedly failing to protect him from abuse and retribution from inmates inside the facility. Okay? He alleges that he was labeled a snitch by guards and inmates. And this being labeled a snitch put his life in danger. Now, this thing with Gallipo and McPherson here, this is the one that's extremely difficult to read. I have to admit, I'm pretty much good reading most handwriting, but this one right here is really difficult. But it's here. Here's the information for you to go find for yourself if you look. Okay. We will try to highlight just some of the nuggets in here, but you can go find it for yourself. Okay. All right. He claims that records will show that there was wrong. There was failure to protect. There was excessive force. He claims he got stabbed at ISR, sent to protective custody. He was told if he signs affidavit, he'd be sent to the something program where he was sent to Westville Correctional Facility where he was hurt. Okay. I have a history of being, or hurt before, previously hurt. He had a history of being a snitch. Okay. And he goes through here describing how that they were trying to extort him and intimidate him, and that there were people setting other inmates against him. He also claims that that there was a gangster disciple who had assaulted him, and that he was stabbed by a gangster disciple. He says he was surrounded one night in the bathroom area. He told the, probably they were going to grape him or beat him. Anyway, he told the officer, of course, the officer laughs, and probably goes snitch at him. But he talks about how this was all caught on camera. Okay. And he continuously talks about all the reports, cameras, and all of this stuff. And he goes through several incidents. And again, any of you can take this and outline each single of the incidents he goes through. But it's basically a litany of intimidation and beatings and this sort of abuse. And the entire time, like I said, there was rapes. So this whole thing he's going through, the entire time, all the guards are laughing. They are further snitching on the snitch, and they're basically enjoying his abuse. Okay, like as entertainment. But he keeps going in. Okay, if you go through this, he goes on and on and on and on about several incidents of whether it be excessive force, it would be beatings, it would be rapes, stabbings, and the whole time, the guards are watching, they're laughing, they're failing to investigate, they're ignoring, they're throwing him into the dogs. He's beat up, he's stabbed, he's again raped, he's robbed, just typical that you've heard from several of these individuals, you see. Then he goes and he names, okay. Primarily, he starts with naming Gallipo, and then he names all the others here that he has these grievances with, see. And let's see, this is further where he talks about being placed back in solitary. Okay. Again, he goes into multiple other incidents of being beat, extorted, assaulted, gang raped, robbed. As you can see, I'm not going to try to read through all this. This is bad handwriting, and I think we need to move on. But this is available freely on the internet for all of you out there. Okay. And you see, he says here he's labeled a snitch, which is why he's treated this way. But you can all go and dig this up. I would highly recommend it. Okay. And again, this is from 2022. Okay. This is 2022. And see, these are some of the attachments here where he's begging, you see. All right. So hopefully those are all the receipts you need to know that this is not a made up story. Okay. This is not a made up story. It's not bullshit. Anyway. Oh, look, I want to highlight this. All right. Yeah. Starts here. Okay. Starts here. Look, check this out, y'all. Those of you with notebooks, Monokawala. Got a history of mental illness, couldn't pick up meds at MedPass due to my life being in danger. Okay. You'll see what meds I was on. Place me back on these meds, please. Need to see psychologist to be placed back on mental health meds. Please, Dr. Manakawala. Okay. A few days later, Dr. Manakawala is denying me mental health. I have a history of mental health illness. She could check the computer. Most hospital passes are being denied due to officers due to me being on protective custody status. I have mental issues, mental illness issues, or mental issues that need to be addressed. I'm being denied mental health. I need to be scheduled for mental health and placed back on meds. You see what I mean? He's begging. He's doing their jobs for them, is the way that I would state it. Manakawala, again, is denying me mental health. Okay. I need to be scheduled for mental health and placed back on meds. See request for health care sent back to me. Thank you. Okay. So this says, your grievance has been addressed. You were given glasses. And he says, no. Yeah, I'm given glasses. I got my glasses, but I'm talking about my meds. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot here. I don't want to waste too much time, but as you see, this is something. And see, he's still begging for psychologists. See that? Goes on and on and on and on. This is a letter to Gallipo. Okay, so let's move on, brother. That's Mr. McPherson. Let's see where I am now. Let's see. I got to keep trucking. Okay, I can't get sidetracked here. So let's see. It's a difficult one. This is a lot. Oh gosh, geez. Okay. All right. Just a moment. All right, we got it. We got it. Now, I'm going to move on to Robert Baston. There's a few things I want to show to you. All right. Due to the inhumane conditions and corruption going on in the Indiana Department of Correction and Westville Restrictive Housing Unit, where defendant Richard Allen is being held and abused and mistreated by corrupt staff, officers, and inmates, and the news media exposure, I'm requesting a return stamped court dated copy of this letter to the court. So I have for my records that your office has received this letter to the court and that it was processed because due to the corruption going on here at Westville Restrictive Housing Unit and the Westville Correctional Facility, some of my outgoing legal mail has not made it to the addressed destinations. Thank you for your time concerning this correspondence and request. Robert Baston. Okay, November 23rd, 2023. Okay. I got that out of order. Sorry. I'm going to go to this one, though. Let's back up. We keep that in mind. That's November. Let's go back to April. I am an inmate at Westville Correctional Facility in the same unit that Richard Allen is being housed in, awaiting trial. Right? Richard Allen is being abused and mistreated along with other inmates in Westville Control Unit restrictive housing. There are corrupt officers and ranking officers calling Richard Allen a kid killer, teasing him that he has a visit from his friends and family. Phone is ringing on his tablet. Inmates in cells A1, 102, Logan Osborne, A2, 207, inmate Riley, inmate in cell A2, 204, and A2, 205 are threatening to kill Richard Allen and telling him to do the same to himself. And these inmates have made these comments in front of Warden John Gallipo, ranking officers and officers. The staff has recorded on camera these inmates making these threats and suggestions to unalive himself, and they have done nothing to stop it. I have proof and evidence of assaults by ranking officers and officers on inmates, abuse and mistreatment and grievance, and the Governor's Office of Ombudsman Bureau that have been mishandled and covered up because the Indiana Department of Correction is allowed to police itself with their Office of Investigation and Intelligence. I recently sent letters to the U.S. Department of Justice from the Indiana State Representative Dr. Vernon G. Smith and from the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee concerning the DOJ and FBI mishandling complaints on the Indiana Department of Correction and their facilities. On March 21st, 2023, while in the same unit as Richard Allen, I attempted unaliving. And I spent 3 days in the hospital due to staff and officer abuse and mistreatment. On April 9th, 2022, I attempted a self-deletion and spent 4 days in the hospital intensive care unit. The IDOC, or their mental health provider, has provided me no mental health help or treatment. Oh, 2 unaliving attempts? Okay. No mental health treatment. Sure. Okay. I correspond with a New York Times investigative reporter and her team at the University School of Law and have made them aware of the assaults, abuse, and mistreatment going on here at Westville Correctional Facility and other IDOC facilities. Please forward this letter to the judge in Richard Allen's case and to his attorneys because I have wrote to the organizations mentioned to expose the assaults, abuse, and mistreatment. Respectfully submitted and sincerely, Robert Baston. Okay. P.S. Richard Allen's attorneys just exposed this treatment. Okay, now we're going to move back on. Okay, now we're going back to the November that I was saying. I read the introductory letter where he's asking for a receipt. It says, to the judge, prosecutor, and attorneys of Richard Allen. The judge, prosecutor, and attorneys in the above cause number have a duty and have taken sworn oaths to uphold the state of Indiana and the United States statutes, laws, and constitutions. And the judge, prosecutor, and attorneys have failed to report the inhumane conditions, human and civil rights violations at Westville Restrictive Housing Unit at Westville Correctional Facility that they have been made aware of. The attorneys for Richard Allen have exposed the inhumane conditions, and pictures of Richard Allen clearly proves the before and after conditions of Richard Allen and his poor mental health And the judge and prosecutor have ignored these poor and inhumane conditions. Okay, so let me pause for a moment before moving on. And for those of you who may not have seen what he's referring to, let me see if I can get something the hell out of here and get something the hell in here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Well, I've tried twice. It doesn't want to pull up. So let's continue. Let us continue. Richard Allen is not convicted. Notice the triple underlines here, right? Richard Allen is not convicted, and he's being treated like a state of Indiana prisoner because a county sheriff department alleges they cannot keep Richard Allen safe. That is their duty as keepers of the county jail. So let's send Richard Allen to a state of Indiana correctional facility that is constantly short-staffed, creating unsafe and dangerous prison inhumane conditions. Inhumane conditions at Westville. Letter to the court. I used to be in a cell just above defendant Richard Allen, and as soon as I started voicing my opinion and advocating the abuse, mistreatment, and inhumane conditions of Richard Allen, myself and other inmates back in April of 2023, and recording times and dates of incidents, the corrupt Westville Correctional Facility warden, John Gallipo, custody supervisor, Chad Corin, Westville Restrictive Housing Unit Captain Gary Lewis, and manager Mrs. Tracy Cornett retaliated on me. On approximately April 29th, 2023, and had me moved from a pod away from defendant Richard Allen. Then, on May 4th, 2023, a corrupt lieutenant, Larry Crittenden, places me on strip cell status and has corrupt Sergeant Robinson, that name sound familiar? Officer Garu and Officer Pleasant remove all of my property from my cell so I could not write or record dates and times of incidents, and went through my property to destroy any incriminating dates and times that I had recorded. Is everyone understanding? And notice the dates, okay? April to May, the cusp of April and May of 2023. Let me ask you, what was going on with Richard Allen during this time? Then the corrupt staff and officers left my property unsecured out in the hallway. So general population, inmate restrictive housing unit workers, and inmate suicide companions were stealing my property. I then informed staff, officers on May 4th, 2023 that I was feeling self-deletional, where I was then taken to Westville Restrictive Housing Unit receiving area and placed in a cell with no toilet or running water. Listen to that. Placed in a cell with no toilet or running water. And I had to relieve myself on the floor of the cell. telling y'all. The next morning, which was May 5th, 2023, again, compare that to the times that Richard Allen was suffering at the same time. On May 5th, 2023, at approximately 7 a.m., I was placed in full trip gear restraints with handcuffs, black box, belly chain, and leg shackles. This sounds like what Richard Allen was always in. On security camera, and corrupt Sergeant Brandon Williams and officers remove me from the holding cell and escort me back to my assigned cell, B6202, and Sergeant Brandon Williams orders one of his corrupt officers to run my mattress and bedding through the urine on the floor of the cell, since I was left in a cell overnight with no running water and no toilet. Then corrupt Sergeant Brandon Williams, note, who has a lawsuit on him in the U.S. Northern District of Indiana for assaulting an inmate and denying the inmate medical treatment for his injuries, can be seen on security cameras slamming me to the floor while in full trip gear restraints and violently twisting on my foot and ankle until they break. Then intimidating the nurse not to treat my injuries of a broken foot and an ankle and a stab wound to my elbow all the way to the bone that was bleeding badly from an ink pen sticking out of Sergeant Brandon Williams' stab vest, and I was then taken back to my assigned cell, B6202. Then, at approximately 10:45 a.m., corrupt Sergeant Brandon Williams returns to my cell door, and with no video camera recording, Sergeant Brandon Williams opens the handcuff port door in the cell door and sprays me with OC pepper spray, bear spray, while I was laying on the bed suffering from my injuries earlier that morning. Then the corrupt Sergeant Brandon Williams leaves me in the cell, asphyxiating for air for approximately 10 minutes before removing me from the cell. Sergeant Brandon Williams, former officer, and now Sergeant Motts, Officer Clemens, and an unknown named officer take me out of view of security cameras in the hallway, and Officer Quentin Davis tells Sergeant Brandon Williams to hold me up while Officer Quentin Davis violently punches me in the ribs and stomach, breaking my ribs. And former officer and now Sergeant Motts kneed me in the face, while corrupt Westville Correctional Facility Warden John Gallipo and mental health Dr. Monica Walla and Miss Bourne watched the beatdown. Note, Officer Quentin Davis also has a federal lawsuit on him for assaulting an inmate and denying medical treatment for his injuries. I was then taken to Westville Restrictive Housing Unit receiving area to be decontaminated from the OC pepper spray, the bear spray, and then taken to the nurse's station to have my vital signs checked. And again, the nurse was intimidated not to treat my injuries. I was then taken back to my assigned cell, B6202. Note, the nurse and mental health Miss Bourne quit their jobs right after this excessive use of force assault with bodily injury and may become whistleblowers if investigated. In May of 2023, right after the excessive use of force assault with bodily injury, Attorney Bradley A. Rozzi, the attorney for Richard Allen, requested an interview with me concerning the poor treatment of Richard Allen and other inmates at Westville Restrictive Housing Unit and the inhumane and conditions and human and civil rights violations going on. And someone at either Indiana Department of Corrections, Central Office, or Westville Correctional Facility Warden John Gallipo denied that interview because they did not want attorney Bradley A. Rozzi to see and record my injuries that they were trying to cover up. I remained in a cell for over a month, suffering from my injuries before I received medical treatment after being taken off of strip cell and receiving my property back and contacting the State of Indiana Governor's Office of Ombudsman Bureau, who contacted the IDOC Office of Investigation and Intelligence, who then got me medical treatment for only my broken foot and ankle, where x-rays confirmed they were broken. And keep in mind, he's saying he had a broken ankle, a broken foot, and a broken rib for over a month that remained untreated until he reached out to the State of Indiana Governor's Office, who contacted the IDOC Investigation and Intelligence Office, who then forced the medical treatment for the broken foot and ankle where x-rays confirmed they were broken. And Richard Allen's attorney, Bradley Rozzi, was not given access to interview him until August 4th, 2023, approximately 3 months after the beatdown, after the excessive use of force with bodily injury. I received poor medical treatment for my injuries. Westville Correctional Facility Dr. Liam and a Franciscan orthopedic doctor ordered me to be placed in a medical boot. Well, obviously, with a broken foot and ankle, you would need to have a medical boot. But corrupt warden John Gallipo, custody supervisor Major Chad Corinth, and Captain Gary Lewis violated the United States and United Nations rules for the treatment of prisoners. Note, while being interviewed by Brad Rozzi on August 4, 2023, a corrupt sergeant, Dahlia, went to my cell and took all of the incriminating dates and times I had recorded. But this rule, called the Nelson Mandela Rule, state the following: clinical decisions may only be taken by the responsible healthcare professionals and may not be overruled or ignored by non-medical prison staff. All prisons shall ensure prompt access to medical attention in urgent cases. Prisoners who require specialized treatment or surgery shall be transferred to specialized institutions or hospitals. The corrupt Indiana Department of Investigations and Intelligence has seemed to cover up the excessive use of force assault with bodily injury and has closed the case. The corrupt Indiana DOC Office of Investigation and Intelligence is quick to collect evidence and charge inmates who assault staff and officers, but seem to cover up when corrupt staff and officers assault inmates. The Indiana DOC should not be allowed to police itself and allow corrupt investigations of the Office of Investigation and Intelligence, who some use to be either IDOC staff or correctional officers themselves and are friends with the corrupt IDOC staff and officers that the investigators are supposed to be investigating. I mean, tell me, what's wrong here? Let's continue. There needs to be a disbanding of the corrupt IDOC Office of Investigations and Intelligence and state and federal investigations into the corruption going on and the inhumane conditions, human and civil rights violations due to the constant staff and officer shortages going on in all IDOC facilities that are creating unsafe and dangerous prison conditions. On November 8th, 2023, an inmate at Westville Correctional Facility was murdered. Again, on November 8th, 2023, an inmate at Westville Correctional Facility was murdered. Approximately in June of 2023, an inmate died of starvation in Westville Restrictive Housing Unit. Inmates have died of self-deletion in IDOC facilities due to this corruption. For example, I, Robert Baston, at Pendleton Correctional Facility Restrictive Housing Unit, swallowed 50 325 milligram Tylenol pain relievers and was taken to the hospital via ambulance and spent 4 days in St. Vincent Ascension Hospital Intensive Care Unit. I then was transferred to Westville Restrictive Housing Unit, where the IDOC medical provider Centurion, Dr. Leo, was negligent when prescribing me 500 milligrams Tylenol without checking my medical and mental health records history. Where again, on March 21st, 2023, I took 5,500 milligram Tylenols and had to be taken to the hospital via. Why is this guy even in possession of 50 pills? Can't they give him one at a time per day? Jesus Christ, why are they giving these guys a bottle of 50 pills of anything? I took 5,500 milligram Tylenol and had to be taken to the hospital via ambulance and was in Franciscan Hospital Intensive Care Unit for 3 days. Less than a year later, on April 19th, 2023, at Pendleton. As of the date of this letter, the Indiana Department of Corrections and their medical and mental health providers still has not offered me any mental health treatment, when it's documented in my medical and mental health records of multiple self-deletion attempts and serious hunger strikes. The Indiana Department of Correction and their medical and mental health help to me has only been once a week coming by the cell wellness check, and once a month out of cell consultation. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? If the IDOC and their medical and mental health is not short-staffed or short on officers to escort an inmate to a meeting or room cubicle with a mental health professional. That is not, and look again, the triple underline, that is not mental health treatment. If I remain in IDOC restrictive housing, I will self-delete. Listen to his pleading. If I remain in IDOC restrictive housing, I will self-delete. Now, then there's a very serious issue of defendant Richard Allen, other inmates, and myself. Listen to this one. Being exposed to dangerous, toxic, secondhand smoke from inmates in Westville Restrictive Housing Unit smoking K2 synthetic marijuana. That's called spice. That is affecting health and mental health of inmates and staff and officers. Again, there's serious issue of defendant Richard Allen and other inmates and myself being exposed to dangerous secondhand smoke of spice in Westville Restrictive Housing Unit. I have submitted many grievances concerning the dangerous, toxic secondhand smoke and corrupt officers who are either trafficking with inmates or assisting the inmates in trafficking of contraband at Westville Correctional Facility custody staff, and the IDOC Office of Investigation and Intelligence has mishandled these grievances and complaints. I have contacted Mrs. Emily Bazelon, a New York Times investigative reporter, and her her team at University of Yale Law School, who have contacted a Mr. Chad Blackwelder at the ACLU of Indiana, and I have received investigative report numbers. Okay, and he lists them from the U.S. Department of Justice Criminal Section of the Civil Rights Division. I've requested investigations and federal criminal charges of those who are negligent to those in their care and custody, and the excessive use of force assault with bodily injury of human and civil rights violations. I've also wrote to the LaPorte County, Indiana Prosecutor's Office requesting state of Indiana criminal charges on the excessive use of force assault with bodily injury. The United States Department of Justice sent me a letter requesting additional information that I mailed, but not sure that they've received it due to the corruption going on. Westville Restrictive Housing Unit custody staff say that they care about inmates' quality of life, but I have not had a shower since October 2nd of 2023. Remember, this letter is November 23rd, 2023. Think about it. October 2nd to November 23rd. No shower. And that's because inmates do not want to shower when officers are leaving inmates locked in a tiny triangle shower for hours with no place to sit down, having to stand because of short-staffed, or officers sleeping in the control booths or in one of the offices. Inmates in Westville Restrictive Housing are being served Indiana DOC Aramark food service meals that are overcooked and burnt, and often items are missing from trays that are on the menu. The breakfast consists of cornflake cereal, cake, peanut butter, jelly mix that upsets your stomach and gives you diarrhea, 2 slices of bread, and a Kool-Aid packet that's supposed to be fruit juice or a piece of fruit. Try eating that every day, 7 days a week. At other IDOC facilities, breakfast consists of a hot breakfast such as eggs, oatmeal, and other items. The corrupt Westville Correctional Facility Warden John Gallipo does not allow the Christian Amish church group called Christmas Behind Bars to pass out Christmas sacks to inmates because Warden John Gallipo is the leader here of a pagan white nationalist cult called Odin. The corrupt staff and officers here at Westville Correctional Facility and at other Indiana DOC correctional facilities wear Odin patches and Punisher patches on their uniforms and stab vests. The corrupt staff and officers that wear Punisher patches and Odin patches is a group of good old boys that assault, torture, abuse, and mistreat inmates. I submitted an IDOC grievance to the IDOC Office of Investigations and Intelligence concerning the Odin and Punisher patches, but the grievance never got processed due to the corruption. I also submitted grievances on the excessive use of force assault with bodily injury and the poor medical treatment for my injuries, and how the first set of x-rays confirmed that I had a broken foot and ankle, and a set of second x-rays were taken, and they state that I only had a broken ankle. Then there were no x-rays done on my broken ribs or the stab wound to my elbow. The IDOC Office of Investigations and Intelligence investigator confirmed to me that she, Mrs. Estes, that the grievances were forwarded to her from the grievance specialist, Mrs. Shannon Smith, and that the grievances will be answered after the investigation is complete. I was informed on November 2nd, 2023, that the investigation was closed by the investigator, Miss Estes, and the grievances still have not been answered. And remember, this is the 23rd. And a request for access to public records was denied when I requested the security camera evidence of the excessive use of force assault incident and reports, grievances, and other documents. When I was in a cell just above defendant Richard Allen, I witnessed officers taunting him, calling him a baby killer, kid killer, and deliberately slamming the shower door next to Richard Allen's cell to either wake him up or just to annoy Richard Allen. I also witnessed other abuse and mistreatment of Richard Allen. There are dozens of lawsuits on staff and officers at Westville Restrictive Housing Unit in the U.S. Northern District Court of Indiana that clearly show a pattern of assault, torture, abuse, and mistreatment on inmates by corrupt staff and officers. the Indiana Department of Corrections seems to put their corrupt staff and officers in their restrictive housing units who assault, torture, abuse, and mistreat inmates. Before I close this letter up, I want to apologize to the court concerning the sloppy handwriting, but I am having to write this. See attached ink pen that the inmates are forced to write court documents. These are state issued ink pens because the corrupt Indiana Department of Corrections tries to discourage inmates from filing lawsuits and other court petitions and motions. It is also the duty of the court, judge, and prosecutor and attorneys in this case number who have taken a sworn oath to uphold and protect the state of Indiana and the United States statutes, laws, and Constitution to report the inhumane conditions, human and civil rights violations that are being made, that they are being made aware of in the Westville Restrictive Housing Unit and at other IDOC facilities. Respectfully submitted, Robert Baston, okay, November 23rd, 2023. All right, so how many of you think he's making that up? How many of you think that he made all of that up and that he was wrong? Plus, how many of you think that he ever had a discussion with Richard Allen about the Odin patches? Because surely you do recall that Richard Allen also maintained that the ones who were coming at him were the Odin patches. Hey, remember this? Let's see. Can I find it for you, or am I going to fail? Oh, maybe I can find it for you. I don't know. Where is it? Somewhere around here. During one memorable visit on May 4th, 2023, myself, Max Baker, Andrew Baldwin, and attorney Rozzi met with Richard Allen to discuss matters involving the case. At this time, Richard Allen was in a mental and physical state of deterioration and was nearly non-communicative. During this visit, Richard Allen repeatedly asked whether or not his wife was okay and if his family was okay. He claimed on a couple of occasions that they were going to kill him. When asked who he was referring to as they, Richard responded by saying, "The guys with the Odin patches." Up to this point in the legal process, Richard Allen's defense team had never mentioned Odinism or Odinist to Richard Allen, either directly or indirectly. The first time I'm aware of any mention of Odinist involvement to Richard Allen was during the August 25th, 2023 visit. All right? Oh, it gets even richer. I'm going to take a little journey down a road. And actually, let me get a piece of chocolate because I need fuel for this one. You guys, go get your refills. All right, we're ready to go. Let's listen to this, okay? Indiana Protection and Advocacy Service Commission versus Commissioner, Indiana Department of Correction. All right, this is October 1st, 2008. Complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. A significant number of prisoners committed to the care and custody of the Indiana DOC have serious mental illnesses that significantly impede their ability to function within the prison environment. The Indiana Department of Correction provides insufficient programs and placements to treat those prisoners, and many are confined in segregation, are excessively isolated, and in harsh conditions which exacerbate their illnesses and conditions where they fail to receive adequate mental health care. The failure of the Indiana DOC and its agents to adequately treat the prisoners in non-segregated and therapeutic environments violates the Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, as well as the American with Disabilities Act 42 U.S. Code and the Rehabilitation Act 29 U.S. Code. This action for injunctive and declaratory relief is brought by the Indiana Protection and Advocacy Services Commission, which is empowered and charged by federal law to protect the rights of mentally ill and developmentally disabled individuals in Indiana, and has standing to bring this action on behalf of its numerous clients and constituents who are mentally ill prisoners affected by defendants' unlawful actions and inactions. Okay? Jurisdiction, venue, and cause of action. Okay? You got it. Parties, well, you got it. Okay, let's go to facts. Down at the bottom. Factual allegations. The Protections for Advocacy for Individuals Mental Illness Act, 42 U.S. Code, provides for establishment and funding of systems within each state which are designed to protect and advocate the rights of individuals with mental illness, as well as to investigate incidents of abuse, neglect of those with mental illness. This federal funding is to be given to independent agencies and organizations which have the capacity to protect and advocate the rights of individuals with mental illness. The system established by each state to protect and advocate the rights of mentally ill individuals must have the authority to pursue administrative, legal, and other appropriate remedies to ensure the protection of individuals with mental illness who are receiving care or treatment in the state. Pursuant to Indiana law, Indiana Code 122811, IPAS has been designated as the Protection and Advocacy Agency under both the Protection and Advocacy for Individuals with Mental Illness Act and the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act. IPAS receives absolutely no state funding. IPAS has the legal authority to, quote, provide legal and other advocacy services throughout Indiana to individuals or organizations on matters related to the protection of the legal and human rights of individuals with a developmental disability and individuals with a mental illness. IPAS has the legal authority to sue and be sued in its own name. IPAS has the legal authority to enter into contractual relationships in its own name. IPAS has the legal authority to apply for, solicit, and accept contributions or of grants of money, property, or services made by gift, device, bequest, grant, or other means from any source. One of IPAS's primary legal responsibilities is to investigate allegations of abuse and neglect involving individuals with mental illness and to advocate for appropriate treatment and programs for such individuals. IPAS's legal role is to ensure that their legal and civil rights are provided for and protected, and that they are treated with dignity and respect, and that they receive appropriate services to address their needs. IPAS brings this action on behalf of the prisoners within the DOC who are currently clients and constituents of IPAS and who are mentally ill and are confined in segregation or other isolated confinement or seclusion settings, and who are not receiving adequate treatment programs. The prisoner clients and constituents of IPAS in this action, confined within the DOC, are confined to, quote, facilities, quote, rendering care and treatment for the mentally ill as that term is defined by 42 U.S. Code. Facts concerning levels of confinement within the DOC. Prisoners who are committed to the Indiana Department of Correction may be placed in, among other places, an array of state institutions, which range from minimally restrictive to high security institutions. These state institutions are owned, managed, and operated by the state of Indiana, with the exception of the Newcastle Correctional Facility, which, although owned by the state of Indiana, is operated and managed by the GEO Corporation, a private, for-profit company through a contract with the DOC, and the DOC is ultimately in control of the care and custody of its prisoners confined there. The lower security institutions feature a dormitory-style housing and tend to house prisoners with less violent crimes and shorter criminal histories than those in higher security level prisons. The higher security prisons, including Wabash Correctional Facility, Indiana State Prison, also known as Michigan City, and Pendleton Correctional Facility, house many prisoners in cells and have prisoners who, because of their committing offense and criminal history, require closer supervision and restrictive security measures. The higher security prisons contain segregation units where prisoners may be placed either for disciplinary reasons, for a specific period of time, or for indeterminate periods of time if the prisoners are on administrative segregation. The DOC also maintains at the Westville Correctional Facility and the Wabash Correctional Facility secure confinement units, which are long-term segregation units. The DOC has specific policies and administrative procedures that govern both administrative and disciplinary segregation of prisoners. By policy and procedure, prisoners who are in segregation will be placed in solitary cells, generally for 23 hours each day. They are released from their cells for a minimum of 3 solitary showers a week and for 1 hour of daily recreation. Some segregated prisoners receive recreation only 5 days a week. The recreation may be in solitary or may be solitary, although outdoor recreation may take place in contiguous cages, housing other prisoners engaged in outdoor recreation. General facts concerning the treatment of mentally ill prisoners within the DOC system. All medical care, including mental health care, within the DOC has been contracted to a private, for-profit company, Correctional Medical Services. The DOC has a mental health services plan for adult offenders that provides, among other things, for services for prisoners who are diagnosed with mental illness, serious mental illness, or a developmental disability. The above terms are defined as follows by DOC. Just a moment. Mental illness, Axis 1 disorder, exclusives of substance abuse, dependence of paraphernalia with the GAF score above 40, serious mental illness, Axis 1 disorder, exclusives of substance abuse, dependency of paraphilia with a GAF score of 40 or below. An Axis 1 disorder refers to the listing of mental disorders maintained in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, a handbook used by mental health professionals. The GAF score is a global assessment of functioning scale, a subjective measure of the patient's overall level of psychological, social, and occupational functioning on a hypothetical continuum from 0 to 100. Because the GAF score is a subjective impression of the person's functioning at the moment he's been seen by a clinician, it has no direct bearing on the severity of a mental impairment. In fact, the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration has specifically indicated that the GAF score has no direct correlation to the mental disorder listings utilized to evaluate a person's disability. The GAF score is of limited use in prison settings inasmuch as it is supposed to be a measure, among other things, social and occupational functioning, both of which are severely restricted or non-existent within the prison setting. Hold on again, please. The residential treatment and chronic care units at Michigan City. Pursuant to a private settlement agreement, the DOC has not agreed to house any prisoner with an Axis 1 diagnosis within the secure confinement at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. In 2007, the DOC opened up 2 units at Michigan City to house mentally ill prisoners. One of these is called the RTU, or Residential Treatment Unit, and is designed to house up to 66 prisoners in a program designed to transition them to regular housing. On information and belief, prisoners in the RTU have infrequent individual contact with mental health professionals, although they are allowed out of their cells for 3 hours each day. Prisoners in the RTU have reported that there have been 2 unalivings by self-deletion by prisoners who were confined there. The other unit at Michigan City is the Chronic Care Unit, which is a long-term unit for mentally ill prisoners who are not expected to return to general population within the DOC. Prisoners confined to the Chronic Care Unit report that they have infrequent contact with mental health staff, although they are allowed out of their cells multiple hours each day. The secure mental health treatment at Newcastle. In the summer of 2008, the DOC opened a new unit at Newcastle Correctional Facility, the Secure Mental Health Treatment Unit, STFU. Shut the fuck up. For prisoners who fall within the DOC's definition of seriously mentally ill who are subject to segregation in the DOC. There are 96 beds available at the STFU. But at the current time, the DOC is planning to only fill 67 of the 96 beds. Prisoners at the STFU are housed in individual cells behind solid doors. Although the DOC does not consider the STFU to be a segregation unit, prisoners are left in their cells 23 hours a day with 1 hour individual recreation. 3 times a week, the prisoners are released for a solitary shower. The doors to the cells in the shut the fuck up are solid doors with a small window, and the cuff port is locked from the outside except when it's open to slide in meals or to spray with pepper spray I mean, or for the prisoner to extend his wrist so they can be cuffed from behind before he leaves the cell and is then beat and sprayed with pepper spray. The prisoners are fed in their cells. Because the doors are solid, the prisoners have no way of seeing other prisoners. Recreation either takes place indoors in a small barred area that has been constructed for the prisoners in a day room that prisoners formerly had access to, or in one of a number of cages constructed outside. If a prisoner elects to take a shower, he is cuffed and then escorted to the shower where he may be left for an extended period of time. Remember, Baston said they'll leave you 4 or 5 hours in that shit at times. When prisoners are removed from their cells, they wear leg chains. Their hands are cuffs. A leash is connected to the leg chains, and they are escorted by guards. The large majority of interactions between mentally ill prisoners and mental health professionals on the shut the fuck up take place in short discussions at the cell fronts, which require the prisoner and the professional to yell at each other through the solid cell door. This is an unsatisfactory and inappropriate mental health intervention, as much as there is absolutely no privacy. Because of the lack of confidentiality, it is extremely difficult to accurately assess the prisoner's mental health functioning, and the prisoners do not disclose necessary information concerning their mental conditions. The major programming plan for prisoners in the STF is the ACT program, present in other locations within the DOC, which is a behavior modification program where the prisoner, in his cell, views recordings broadcast via closed-circuit television and completes worksheets, which he returns not to a mental health professional, but to his correctional counselor. What? As the person progresses through the program, he will first own some, then more, commissary privileges. It is not a program that will adequately and effectively treat mental illness. Confinement in virtual isolation exacerbates the illness of those who are mentally ill and is extremely deleterious to mental health of mentally ill prisoners. Hello? Do you guys understand that one? The continued segregation of mentally ill prisoners. After all, the prisoners who the DOC plans to move out of segregation units into the shut the fuck up are moved, there will still be more than 230 prisoners who have Axis 1 diagnoses who will be confined in regular segregation units within the DOC. In these units, they will be subjected to severe isolation and lack of environmental stimulation. This isolation is extremely detrimental and harmful to the mental health of mentally ill persons. In these units, the primary, if not sole contact the prisoners will have with mental health staff will be brief conversations at their cell doors, which, for the reasons indicated above, is wholly inadequate. An example of the segregation units to which mentally ill persons are being confined is the custody and control unit, which is located at the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility. There are a significant number of prisoners on this unit who are mentally ill. As in all segregation units, those imprisoned in this unit are held in isolation for 23 hours a day. They are released for solitary recreation and showers. The prisoners are held behind solid doors, which only increases their isolation and the mental health problems flowing from the isolation. Mentally ill prisoners on the segregation unit report that they are frequently and violently extracted from their cells by armed correctional officers. Yeah, like Robert Baston described, right? All right. And remember, we had the same with Richard Allen a number of times. These violent encounters are often caused by the prisoner's mental illness when, for example, they engage in such irrational behavior as refusing to cuff up so they can leave their cells. Ah, sounds familiar. Oh, what is this? 2008. It's like they can predict what happened to Richard Allen. Isn't that rich? Prisoners, including mentally ill prisoners who are deemed to have misbehaved in the custody and control unit, are punished by being placed in strip cells for 21 days. Prisoners are stripped of most of their clothing, but have it returned to them over time if their behavior improves. Oh, sounds familiar, doesn't it? However, during the entire 21-day period, the prisoners are fed Nutriloaf, which is a food substance made by cooking vegetables together so they form a block. All the prisoners receive for their meals is a portion of Nutriloaf and 2 pieces of bread. On information and belief, there have recently been a number of attempted self-deletions in this unit. Mentally ill prisoners confined in other segregation units throughout the DOC do not see mental health staff with any frequency. All right. General factual allegations. The IPAS represents, as clients and constituents, severely mental ill prisoners or mentally ill prisoners who are placed in segregation throughout the DOC as well as the STFU. The segregation units, as well as the shut the fuck up, into which the DOC has placed more than 300 prisoners, including the IPAS as clients and constituents who have Axis 1 diagnoses are otherwise seriously mentally ill, features severe social isolation, lack of environmental stimulation, and lack of frequent contact with mental health staff, and cause psychological deterioration of the prisoners confined there. Now, take that and shove it. Think of that paragraph we just read. That's number 71. What you guys need to do is screenshot paragraph 71. These conditions create a substantial risk of serious harm to the mentally ill prisoners who are confined there, including IPAS's clients and constituents, and in fact cause them ongoing and severe harm. These conditions deprive mentally ill prisoners, including the IPAS's clients and constituents, of the minimal civilized measure of life's necessities. Yeah, I would agree. The psychological and mental health needs of these prisoners, including IPAS's clients and constituents, represent a serious medical need, and the exacerbation of their illnesses and conditions due to the conditions of their confinement also constitutes a serious medical need. Despite prior litigation which highlighted the danger of confining mentally ill prisoners in 23-hour-a-day isolation, the defendant, which is the Indiana Department of Correction, continues to do so and has failed to provide adequate mental health care for persons so confined. The IDOC is aware of the risk of harm caused by this form of confinement and is deliberately indifferent to it. The prolonged isolated confinement of mentally ill persons, including IPAS's clients and constituents, causes severe harm, and the IDOC at all times has been aware of this fact. Paragraph 78, the defendant has not reasonably accommodated the mentally ill prisoners in segregated and isolated conditions, including IPAS's clients and constituents by providing appropriate treatment in non-segregated and non-isolated environments. Let's read that again. The defendant, the IDOC, has not reasonably accommodated the mentally ill prisoners in segregated and isolated conditions by providing appropriate treatment in non-segregated and non-isolated environments. The continued confinement of mentally ill prisoners in the segregated and isolated conditions noted above without appropriate treatment is causing them irreparable harm for which there is no adequate remedy at law. The mentally ill prisoners confined within the DOC, including IPAS's clients and constituents, are qualified individuals as defined in the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the Rehabilitation Act. Specifically, they have mental impairments that substantially limit one or more of the major life activities, as well as having records of having such impairments, and further are regarded as having such impairments. As qualified individuals with disabilities, the mentally ill prisoners within the DOC meet the essential eligibility requirements for the receipt of services or participation in the activities provided by defendant. At all times, the defendant, the IDOC, has acted under the color of state law. All right. Legal claims. The continued confinement of mentally ill prisoners in the segregated and isolated conditions noted above without adequate and appropriate mental health care and treatment violates the rights of the prisoners to be free from cruel and unusual punishment as guaranteed by the Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and as made applicable to the state of Indiana by the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Defendant, the IDOC, has discriminated against mentally ill prisoners in segregated and isolated confinement throughout the DOC by failing to provide non-segregated and non-isolated housing and increased treatment as a reasonable accommodation to prevent confinement conditions which exacerbate the prisoner's mental illnesses. This represents discrimination against those prisoners in violation of both the Rehabilitation Act and the American with Disabilities Act. All right? So, in my opinion, this right here, just the tip of the iceberg. It's illustrative of the cancer that lies at the heart of this entire dilemma that we found Richard Allen in, and that the state of Indiana is currently engaged in. Okay. And let's do a little something. Let's remind ourselves something here. This is from McClelland's receipt for the physical discovery release, as was revealed to us in February of 2025 in a filing in which this was offered as State's Exhibit 7. Okay, now pay attention to this. And keep in mind that I've said so many times that it is my opinion that this discovery was sanitized before it was handed over. So keep in mind when you're going through this document, which I suggest all of you learn like the back of your hands, This is probably only 65% of what originally existed before it was sanitized, right? Let's be honest here. They deleted exculpatory evidence. They hid it. They deleted it. They destroyed it. They contaminated it. Anyway, let's continue. This is not the point. That's just a little aside. That's not the point of me showing you this. I want to show you this. Files from the thumb drive regarding Westville Prison, cell block video. Cell block video. Okay, we got that. Let's say that. We got some cell block video. Okay, check. Body cam footage during contact with Alan. Oh, so we got some body cam footage during the contact with Alan. Okay. Door sheets. Oh, so we got some door sheets. Okay. When you guys are requesting information, other Westville IDOC reports and documents. Okay, so are you telling me that what exists within Discovery includes cell block video, body cam footage, door sheets, and IDOC reports and documentation? Okay, noted. Okay, I'm giving you all of that. Keep in mind that we also know that there are trial exhibits that are available to the general public that for some odd reason we don't have. Keep in mind, somehow amazingly, a couple YouTubers ended up with very specific video. Remember? The interrogations of Richard Allen and the recorded phone calls, oddly enough. It's really odd that those particular YouTubers received those particular releases and nothing else. But you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see the trial exhibits that were shown that showed Richard Allen in horrendous conditions. Horrendous conditions. Right. That's what the world needs to see. That's what needs to be publicized. You know what else I like to see? The confessions of Richard Allen, which include him shooting the girls. You see, I'd like to see all the things that make the state of Indiana look bad. But no. Of course, that's not what's been released and may never be released. So we're stuck. Okay? But, at least there's some little things. For instance, let's go back to something that we should never forget about. Bottom page 19 from the Frank's Memorandum. Odinists in Westville Correctional Facility guarding Richard Allen. The evidence shows that during his pre-trial incarceration at Westville Correctional Facility, Richard Allen has been monitored, intimidated, and mentally abused by correctional officers who are also members of the Odinist cult. Two of those correctional officers are named Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones. These Westville Corrections officers boldly wore patches on their Department of Corrections uniforms that proclaimed, "In Odin we trust." along with another patch displaying symbols of Odinism, interlocking triangles. Both Odinist correctional officers, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones, also display images of runes and other Odinist symbolism on their Facebook pages. Let's reread that for those who don't understand. Both Odinist correctional officers, Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson, display images of runes, altars, and other Odinist symbols on their Facebook pages. For example, as recently as June 25th of 2023, Sergeant Robinson openly displayed a photograph of his Odin altar on his Facebook page. A similar altar can be found on the Facebook page of Brad Holder. Beginning at least on April 3rd, 2023, Sergeant Jones and Robinson wore their Odinist patches when the defense team visited Richard Allen. However, Sergeant Robinson and Jones's brazen display of their Odin patches came to an end on August 17th of 2023. What changed? Why suddenly did they no longer display their Odin patches beginning August 17th, 2023? Well, it was not until August 10th of 2023, the deposition of Jerry Holman, that Richard Allen's defense team finally revealed to the prosecutor and Unified Command that for many months they had been fully aware of the evidence linking Odinism to the murders. It was also at this August 10th, 2023 deposition that Unified Command learned that Allen's defense team was not only aware of this Odinist information, but also intended to expose the linkage of Abby's and Libby's murders to Odinism, and would also be revealing the names of these Odinists at trial. At that deposition, Jerry Holman and prosecutor Nick McClellan also learned that the defense team obviously intended on exposing Unified Command's failure to pursue the Odinist suspects in spite of powerful evidence of Odinist involvement in the murders. It's also important to note that at his August 10th, 2023 interview, Allen's defense team did not let Holman or anyone else know that they were fully aware of the Odinist correctional officers at Westville wearing "In Odin We Trust" patches. Actually, Richard's defense team's next visit with Allen after the August 10th, 2023 deposition occurred 1 week later on August 17th, 2023. Curiously, in those 7 days since the defense team revealed their knowledge that there was evidence that linked Odinism to the murders, Sergeant Robinson was no longer wearing his Odin patch. It was almost as if someone, Jerry Holman, had alerted someone, possibly John Gallipo, that Odinist Robinson had alerted Odinist Robinson that the jig was up because the lawyers knew about the link to Odinism. So lose the patch and pray the defense attorneys never noticed the damn patches in the first place. Unfortunately for Westville and Unified Command, Rick's defense team absolutely did notice the Odinist patches worn by Robinson and Jones beginning April 3rd, 2023. Furthermore, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the conspicuous absence of Sergeant Robinson's Odin patches following Trooper Holman's realization that Rick's defense team was fully aware of the connection between the murders and Odinism, as well as a failure of Unified Command to follow through on the evidence linking the murders to Odinism. Okay? The court will also learn in the body of this memorandum that Sergeant Jones and Robinson were seemingly always by Richard Allen's side during most, if not every, visit. Corrections officers Robinson and Jones were normally within earshot of every conversation between Richard and his attorneys, and between Richard and his wife, enough that Richard would have to be worried about any conversation with his attorneys and with his wife being overheard by Odinist guards, Robinson and Jones, and other correctional officers. Beginning on April 3rd, 2023, and for several visits thereafter, the Westville correction officers even videotaped attorney visits between Richard and his defense team. Most, if not every time, it was Sergeant Jones or Robinson bringing the handheld camcorder to the visit. Corrections officers even required that Allen be positioned facing the window where the corrections officer was videotaping the attorney visit with the handheld camcorder. This positioning of Allen's body would allow the corrections officers to directly videotape Allen's mouth as he talked to his attorneys. Richard would therefore not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorneys, such as saying, quote, "The guards are telling me that my wife and family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her that I killed those girls." Instead, a mentally tortured, abused, and defeated Richard Allen would continuously mutter to his defense team at every single visit these types of general questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? Again, for the idiots in the back. A mentally defeated Richard Allen would continuously mutter to his defense team at every type of visit these questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? At one such meeting with his attorneys, Richard Allen mumbled in a somewhat incoherent fashion that the Odinists were threatening to kill him. It would be important to know that Richard Allen's defense team had never mentioned the words Odinist or Odinism or informed Richard Allen that evidence suggested that Odinists murdered Abby and Libby until August 25th of 2023, when his defense team, in the presence of his wife, Mrs. Kathy Allen, discovered the exculpatory Odin-related evidence. Rick's defense team felt that having him remain unaware would hopefully keep him a bit safer due to his weakened mental state and the concern he might unwittingly discuss his attorney's strategy to Sergeants Jones and Robinson. Rick attorneys opted not to discuss Odinism with their client out of fear that Sergeants Jones and Robinson would then be alerted that Richard's defense team was aware of Odinist involvement in Richard's defense. Odinist involvement as part of Richard's defense. Okay? Richard's defense team needed additional time to investigate and review the evidence before feeling confident and comfortable in revealing their knowledge to the court of the strong evidence that Odinist might have murdered the girls, and Unified Command chosen to do nothing about it, but in fact had hidden these facts from Judge Diener. Therefore, Richard's defense team opted to keep Richard in the dark about the Odinist connection to the murders. This decision has been painfully and emotionally difficult for Rick's defense team, as defense counsel recognized that while the defense took necessary time to review the discovery to establish Odinist links to both the murders and to the Westville Correctional Facility. Defense counsel was also aware that Rick would remain in this hellhole at Westville, subject to the cruelty of Odinist guards Jones and Robinson, and perhaps other Odinist correctional officers. This was especially painful at the June 15, 2023 hearing to transport Rick to Cass County, as defense counsel knew at the time of the links between the murders and Odinism at Westville and Westville, but unfortunately defense needed additional time to fully understand and verify the facts before leveling such accusations. This is the reason the defense tactically decided to keep its knowledge to itself rather than reveal this knowledge in open court at the hearing. Unified's commands hiding the exculpatory evidence and the prosecutor's hiding of the exculpatory evidence is even more angering because of the difficult strategic decisions that could have been avoided had McClellan simply offered up the exculpatory documents sooner. Perhaps then Rick would have filed for a speedy trial or would have been removed from Westville, as the defense would have been able to more fully inform the court about the facts of this case. All right. Now, let's continue to, we're going to skip ahead to page 119, okay? So we're going to turn now. I'm trying to take care of this for you all so we don't waste too much time. I know it's a long show. It's a lot to do. Whoop, wrong one. 119 is what I'm looking for. After his arrest, Richard was forced to be housed in the Westville Correctional Facility. On April 3rd, 2023, two of the transport guards walking Richard to and from his visit prominently displayed multiple patches on their Department of Corrections uniform. The top patch, "In Odin We Trust," was displayed under the embroidered name tags on the right side of their DOC uniform shirt. On the left side of their DOC uniform shirts were two patches. The lower of the two patches consisted of a partial American flag in interlocking triangles. The interlocking triangles is a common symbol for those involved in the pagan Odinist religion. An undercover state trooper who is familiar with hate groups, runes, and Odinism stated that interlocking triangles are associated with the Odinist belief system, which is from the deposition of the undercover state trooper, page 37, lines 11 to 25, and page 38, lines 1 to 17. Above this American flag interlocking triangle patch was a patch that proclaimed, "I hate people." Below are images of those patches. In spite of the fact that for over 5 months, Richard Allen's defense team had been able to bring in their phones when visiting Richard Allen, after Richard's defense team showed photographs of a decrepit Richard Allen at Westville, Warden John Gallipo apparently issued an order that Richard Allen's defense team were no longer allowed to bring in their phones. Because Richard's defense team were no longer able to bring in their phones, the defense team was not able to take photographs or a video of these patches after April 3rd, 2023 on the guards' uniforms. Therefore, the defense is providing affidavits from members of Richard Allen's defense team who viewed these patches on multiple occasions after April 3rd, 2023. And that's going to be the affidavits of Max Baker and Matt Hoffman. Here are the patches worn by the guards. The images below of the patches worn by Sergeant Robinson and Jones were found on Etsy. These patches can be purchased on Etsy. The first time that Richard's defense team noticed Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson and the patches was on April 3rd, 2023. This also coincides with the time frame that Richard Allen's mental health began a steep decline. From that point forward, these two guards seemed inseparable from Richard Allen. Odinist correction officers Robinson and Jones would walk Richard Allen to and from his attorney visits, as well as on one occasion when Richard visited his wife, always wearing these embroidered patches. For a period, Sergeants Robinson and Jones were also videotaping Richard Allen and his interactions with his attorneys. This ended only upon complaint by Richard's attorneys after several visits. Additionally, Sergeant Robinson and Sergeant Jones were always close enough to Richard to be assured that Richard did not feel comfortable talking to his attorneys or to his wife without knowing that these Odinist guards were within earshot of anything he would tell his lawyers or his wife. Max Baker and Matt Hoffman have both been a part of Richard's defense team since December of 2022 and have met with Richard on several occasions. Okay. And again, this is paragraph 10 of Max Baker's affidavit. Just a moment, please. All right, so I've already read to you this information here, so we'll skip it. All right. The defense would remind the court that also Tony Liggett was the only person that refused to support the transport of Richard Allen out of Westville when other options were available. Liggett cited as his sole reason for rejecting Richard Allen being moved from Westville to Cass County, Logansport, is that he would have difficulty transporting Richard Allen to Delphi from Logansport for hearings and trial, a distance of less than 20 miles. Hello. Certainly, the state police were available to assist in transport if Carroll County could not, yet Liggett refused to agree to the transport, leaving Richard Allen in Westville guarded by Odinist. When factoring everything contained in this memorandum, Liggett's objection to moving Richard Allen to Cass County over transportation concerns is troubling, especially when the patches were moved after the depositions. Also filed contemporaneously with the Frank's motion and the memorandum is the defense's emergency request to transport Richard Allen out of Westville to the Cass County Jail. Despite Tony Liggett's objection to the same, as defense has legitimate concerns of Richard Allen's safety once this memorandum and motion are filed. Beyond Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson wearing the Odin and Trust patches, what else links them to Odinism? Sergeant Jones and Robinson's relationships with Odinism went beyond the patches that they each proudly displayed while transporting Richard Allen to and from his attorney visits. Sergeant Robinson. On his Facebook page, Sergeant Robinson does not hide his devotion to Odinism. On June 25th, 2023, Robinson posted a photo of what the defense would call an altar featuring horns, antlers, and Thor's hammer, and a dish sitting atop some type of animal fur with various runes decorating the outer edge of the dish. All these items were placed on what appears to be a circular wooden platter. It appears that Sergeant Jones liked Sergeant Robinson's Odin altar post. Again, I want you all to realize what's being said here. So Sergeant Robinson makes the Odin altar Facebook post, and Sergeant Jones is his Facebook friend and likes the Odin altar post. Sergeant Robinson's altar to Odin was a similar altar to the one posted by Brad Holder. As stated by Max Baker in his affidavit, Sergeant Robinson was involved in transporting Richard Allen to most, if not all, of his attorney's visits. Sergeant Robinson always wore his Odin patches. However, that changed following Holman's contentious August 10th, 2023 deposition. In that deposition, which has been attached and provided to the court as an exhibit, about 2/3 of the way through the deposition, Holman begins getting called out by the defense for Unified Command's incompetent handling of the Odin aspect of the investigation. It was at this point that the defense began asking critical questions concerning the way Unified Command handled the investigation of Holder, Westville, Messer, and Fields. You will note that nowhere in that deposition did the defense reveal to Holman that it was aware that Sergeant Jones and Robinson were wearing the Odin and Trust patches. Attorney Rozzi and defense member Max Baker visited Richard Allen on August 17th, only 7 days after the contentious deposition with Holman, in which it became obvious to him that the defense was fully aware of the strong evidence linking Odinism to the murders. At this August 17th, 2023 visit, as Max Baker states in his affidavit, Sergeant Robinson was no longer wearing his patch. The defense team has no direct knowledge as to whether Jerry Holman or anyone from Unified Command contacted Sergeant Robinson or anyone else from Westville, like John Gallipo, to alert them that Rick's defense team was fully aware of the evidence that supported Odinist being involved in the murders. However, it is certainly a curiosity that deserves attention and consideration. I mean, let's be real here. Let's be real. We're all grown folks, right? We're all adults in this room. Holman's clueless that they know anything about Holder, Fields, Messer, Westville. They depose Holman. They bring all this stuff up. It becomes contentious, obviously. A week later, they go back to Westville for another visit. Poof. Odin patches gone. Disappeared. What are the odds? Do you think it's a coincidence? Listen, I guarantee you it went something like this. Holman calls Liggett or Gallipo. Hey, they're onto the Odinism. Shit got to disappear right now. Shit disappears. As Max Baker also describes in his affidavit, Sergeant Robinson was always within a few feet of Richard Allen during Richard's meeting with his wife, Kathy. The two visits that Richard had with his wife were never without the hustle and bustle and noise of other inmates during their visit. While Warden Gallipo may claim that Westville was doing Richard a favor by allowing him privacy with his wife, the defense views it differently. With no other inmates in the room was completely quiet. Sergeant Robinson could hear every single word, everything that Richard told his wife. Certainly, Robinson and Jones stood close enough to Richard to intimidate Richard from talking openly and honestly with his wife about what was going on at Westville. Additionally, in their combined 50-plus years of practicing criminal defense, attorneys Baldwin and Rozzi have never had their purported confidential attorney visits videotaped with a handheld camcorder. Sergeant Jones and Robinson, beginning on April 3rd, 2023, began videotaping Richard Allen's interactions with his attorneys. Particularly outrageous was the fact that Richard Allen was required to face the camcorder from about 10 feet away through a glass. That means that Richard's mouth was being videotaped. This means that Richard was not able to speak freely to his attorneys and say things like, they are stating that if I don't tell my wife that I'm guilty, then they're saying they're going to harm my wife. If Richard were to say anything like that, it would be on video. Remember, Richard continuously asked his defense team if his wife was okay, if his family was okay. And again, that's the affidavit of Max Baker. Again, I don't know how many times I have to repeat it for you guys. Listen. Richard Allen continuously asked his defense team if his wife was okay, if his family was okay. Let's go back to this one. Richard Allen repeatedly asked whether or not his wife was okay and if his family was okay. He claimed on a couple of occasions they were going to kill him. When asked who was they, he responded by saying the guys with the Odin patches. Right. And it gets even better because it's not just there that is stated. Remember this. Richard would therefore not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorney, such as the guards are telling me that my wife and my family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her I killed those girls. Instead, a mentally defeated Allen would continuously mutter to his defense team at every visit of these types of general questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? Is my wife okay? Is my family okay? Are you getting what I'm saying here? And why I'm concerned about those types of statements and what they might indicate? I mean, all right. Where were we? The defense has obtained video from the prison. On one of these videos that we obtained shows the aftermath of something that happened to Richard Allen. Find attached a still shot of Richard Allen taken from a video that Westville produced. The defense does not have the exact date, but the video indicates that the video was taken between May 26th and May 30th. The still shot is attached to this memorandum as Exhibit 121. The defense is not exactly sure what happened to Richard Allen that caused him to look the way he looks or is depicted in the still shot, whether it was self-harm or something else. The fact that Richard is being watched by Odinists and the evidence strongly supports Odinist involvement in the murders causes great concern for the defense team in terms of Rick Allen's safety. Additionally, in Matt Hoffman's affidavit, you will find that at the last hearing on June 15, 2023, Rick was constantly pleading with the guards not to shock him. And in quotations, please don't shock me. Please don't shock me. Please don't shock me. Has anyone ever remembered that this was on this page? Because, you know, there's been so much for us to have to remember. Let me bring this closer. Have any of you even remembered that this happened? That on the June 15th, 2023 hearing, Rick was constantly pleading with those guards, please don't shock me, please don't shock me, please don't shock me, please don't shock me. Matt Hoffman indicated that Rick made that comment in front of multiple guards and in front of multiple members of Rick's defense team. Sergeant Jones's Facebook posts reveal his ties to Odinism. Find attached an image taken from Sergeant Jones's Facebook page, marked as Exhibit 122. As you can see, the interlocking triangles that appear on Sergeant Jones's patch also appear in this photo. You also notice a rune in the lower left-hand corner of the photo. It's hard to see because it's in black. Also remember that Sergeant Jones liked Sergeant Robinson's photo of the altar to Odin on Facebook. The defense would ask the court review Max Baker's affidavit to learn of Sergeant Jones's involvement in guarding Richard Allen. It's nearly identical to Sergeant Robinson's involvement. They don't teach you in law school what to do when your client who is accused of murder is being guarded by members of a religious cult whose members' evidence strongly supports were involved in the actual murders. Again, the defense is not claiming that Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson were involved in the murders, but that they are Odinist members of the same cult that evidence strongly suggests was involved in the murders of Abby and Libby. Yet, that is where we are. At some point in time, coincidences cease to be coincidences. The fact that Liggett did not want Richard Allen removed from Westville purportedly over transportation issues is curious. The fact that Odinists are guarding Richard is very concerning, or at the very least, curious, considering the evidence discussed in this memorandum. The fact that Sergeant Robinson stopped wearing his "In Odin We Trust" patch within days of Jerry Holman and the Unified Command first learning that the defense was aware of evidence linking Odinism to the crime scene, and that the Unified Command has avoided investigating the Odinists and avoiding handing over discovery that connected to the Odinist members. Again, the court must determine whether Liggett acted intentionally or recklessly when he omitted or lied about the information when drafting the affidavit for the search warrant. The defense would ask the court to consider that Liggett objecting to Richard Allen's transfer to Cass County over transportation issues is evidence of intentionality. Intentionality. I'm tired. In that Liggett wanted Allen to remain in Westville, guarded by Sergeant Robinson, and guarded by Sergeant Jones, and guarded by John Gallipo, and any other Odinist that the defense has not learned of at Westville. Okay? Sorry. Now remember, let me bring you back to something, because I still find this extremely curious. Let me bring you back to this. Where is it? Can you see that? The corrupt Westville facility Warden John Gallipo does not allow the Christian Amish church group called Christmas Behind Bars to pass out Christmas sacks to inmates because Warden John Gallipo is the leader here of a pagan, white, nationalist group called Odinist. Here he says Odin. The corrupt staff and officers here at Westville Correctional Facility and at other Indiana DOC facilities wear Odin and Punisher patches on their uniforms and stab vests. The corrupt staff and officers that wear the Punisher and Odin patches is a group of good old boys that assault, torture, and abuse, mistreat inmates. I submitted a grievance about these Odin and Punisher patches, but of course, it never got processed due to the corruption. Now, this has been the primary body of this episode titled Delphi, the Westville Report. This is my version of the primary concerns about Westville for all of you. But I'd like to add a little something. Keep in mind how things work in corporate America. Here's how it goes in corporate America. There's very little firing. I mean, this is not Walmart. This is not, Circle K. The way things work in corporate America is the way that you're fired goes one of two ways. One, you're asked to resign, okay? That's firing. Listen, we need you to resign. Hand in your resignation. And they sell it to you with things like, it'll give you control of the situation. Yeah. We need you to resign. Or they say, we're going to not renew your contract. We're going to move you. Something like that. You see? So in neither case are you terminated. But your employment nevertheless is ended. So you see how it goes? That's the corporate firing scheme. Now, you know how you determine things like that? You just look. You look back. So I ask you the rhetorical question. I'll offer it to you. Does Monica Walla still work for Westville? Or in the IDOC? Or, does John Gallipo still work as warden at Westville? You see, here's the truth of the matter. Lots of heads have rolled over this. Just not in the way that you would expect to see on your evening news. Because after all, it's CYA, cover your ass, corporate America, doing things the soft way. Now, does reassigning limit them from civil liability and damages? No. So are they off the hook? Not a single one of them. No. So here's my advice to Kathy Allen. I'm going to get real close to this. Sue their balls off. Every single one of them. And that should be clear enough for all of you. Okay. So for all of you who say, we don't care about Kathy Allen, they're nefarious actors, blah, 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 blah. She's going to miss the statute of limitations. Bullshit, she ain't. So, that's my delivery of the Westville report, directly from my heart to yours. And hey, I know there's a whole lot more. Okay, there's a whole lot more that we don't know. But hey, if you happen to be out there and you know more, send it on. Okay, send it on. We want all the dirt on Westville. Every death, every murder, every injury, every suicide. You know the deal. Every bit of it. Um, and I just want to thank you all so much for being here. This is a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad to be here. And despite all the drama queens, the old ladies who ain't got nothing better to do than talk shit, uh, enjoy your social media gaslighting. We're going to be here doing the real work, the actual work, the good work, and standing by all the actual victims in all of this. And I will always do that, whether I'm here on YouTube or not. I will always be standing by the actual victims. And so, God bless everyone. Thank you so much for being here in my chat. I have loved tonight, but unfortunately, it wasn't a night to read the chat because I had too much reading to do as it is. So, apologize I could not keep up with the chat, but I certainly hope you all enjoyed it. And if you're on the replay, please enjoy the comment section. Leave some comments down below. We want the comments. And if you got dirt on the Westville or any of IDOC facilities and catastrophes, go ahead and email them to any one of the advocates for Richard Allen or myself. We appreciate you. And I especially want to thank everyone who's been here in the live chat. Today was Monday, April 14th, after all. I also want to thank Rebecca Ann, 1965, for the super chat. Thank you, Rebecca Ann. Everyone go subscribe to her channel. Also, just so you know, we have a Cash App and a Buy Me a Coffee that should be tagged at the top of the chat. It's also scrolling below me, here below. You can always support the channel with Cash Apps, Buy Me a Coffees, Super Chats, any way you'd like to support the channel. We have little things you can buy, t-shirts and stuff, all sorts of things to support the channel. But also just commenting, hitting the thumbs up, all those things that you already know support YouTube channels. We appreciate it. This channel has grown thanks to you. All I did was show up, and you've all grown the channel from one person to thousands. And I appreciate you all. And all of you who've been here the whole time, stuck with me. Appreciate you for sticking around. We don't always agree, but we're all getting to the same place. You know, I hope you all realize, like, we're on this ship and we're going to the same place. And as long as you're down for the destination, knowing it might be a bumpy ride, I appreciate having you here. Anyway, I want to say thank you to everyone. And that's about it. I am exhausted. This was a lot of talking to do. And so my voice is fried and my eyes are tired and the whole 9 yards. But anyway, thank you all. God bless. Oh, whoever texts me, stop texting. Oh my gosh. What is the text coming through for? All right. I didn't mute the phone. All right. I'm out of here. God bless you all. Peace, love, and happiness, okay? Hug your kids, hug your wife. I'm out.
Thank you.